So I'm going to take you guys through the commercial incentives for solar power. We did this for the Oregon market, but kind of the real meat of it is this pie chart here. I'll send everybody who signs up and leaves an email address. I can send you a more detailed analysis of how the financials look for these projects. So the big incentives that you have here in Washington State, thanks to Don, are the federal tax credit. That's 30% of the system price. And then modified accelerated cost recovery system. That just means you can depreciate any solar project in 5 years, which comes with tax benefits too. Those combined are federal incentives, which will take you down to 36% of the list price. That's not like you'll pay us 36% of the price. You'll have to monetize those tax benefits. So the federal tax credit, you can monetize at one time if you have the appropriate tax burden. So if we're thinking about a $100,000 system, that nets a $30,000 tax credit. So what if my bill is only $5,000? What if my federal tax burden is only $5,000? That means I will not pay taxes for 6 years. Well, I'll pay taxes, but they'll come back to me at the end of the year. Then the depreciation benefits vest over 5 years. You can take half of the depreciable basis in year 1. So that's an additional 17% for a total of 47% is coming back to you after the first year your system's installed come April. Building on that, the Washington State incentives are a production incentive. So you're going to get an additional benefit aside from making your energy cost zero. The utility would pay anywhere from 5 to 11 cents. At the commercial scale, it's always going to make sense to use Washington modules because that gets you an extra nickel per kilowatt hour. That's going to pencil every time. You could use modules from anywhere else and they would get you less benefit. The reason for that, the reason for the difference in those incentive structures is modules made in East Asia are way cheaper than modules made in Washington State. So it's trying to incentivize you to keep those dollars here, like Don said. So that's a really unique thing that Washington has that most other places don't have. I think Minnesota's the only other one. That production benefit is going to cover as much as 50% of your project costs. In actual practice, though, it probably won't go all the way up to 50. So in our preliminary analysis, what you come down to after you calculate those production incentives in a real world scenario is you're essentially, after 5 years, the federal tax benefits are fully monetized. After 8 years, the state production benefits are fully monetized. And then you should be looking at something like 10 to 15% of your original system cost. And what we're seeing is a payback could, and this is going to vary widely depending on what your rate schedule is, but for commercial and residential systems, they should have a 100% return on investment in 5 to 7 years. Now I'm excluding industrial applications. Industrial applications pay about 4.5 cents per kilowatt hour. That payback period is going to be a little bit extended just because the energy that they purchase is already so cheap. So your net cost comes down to something you can pay back in 5 to 7 years. And essentially, like, a way to visualize that is you're getting an employee that requires low maintenance. After you hire that employee just works all the time. Less in winter, but it's working all the time. So a lot of times when you come into private industry, they want something like a 2-year payback or a hurdle rate, an internal rate of return that must be at least 12%. Solar's not quite there yet, but what it does give you is it gives you an amount of agency in how you spend your tax dollars. So you're paying tax dollars right now to the federal government, and we all know what the federal government spends their money on. You can control what you get to spend your money on that year by investing in renewable energy, investing in something you care about. Functionally, the way an installation works is you call us up, you give us an address. What we're going to do initially is just take a look at the satellite imagery of your location, and we're going to look for anything like trees or north-facing roof slopes. Those things we can't do anything about. We don't want to cut trees because that's just kind of off-brand, I guess. You know, we don't want to harm the environment while we're trying to help it, right? After that, assuming that the site kind of meets those requirements, you have either a flat roof space, an east face, a west face, or a south face. Then we come out and do a more intensive site review. And in that site review, what we're looking for is the structural soundness of the roof, if we're putting it on the roof. We're looking at your service panel to make sure that we have enough spot to add to that infrastructure. If we have to add another service panel, like just an electric panel, that's going to affect the cost, you know, a little bit. And then from there, we can fully quote the system. We can give you an accurate quote, and we can tell you this is when it's going to pay off. These are your tax benefits. Here's how you're going to monetize those, and a detailed proposal. After you act on that proposal, depending on permitting, that system could be installed. Best case scenario, construction time is 2 weeks. City of Portland, I don't know if anybody's ever had to permit anything in the City of Portland, but that could go on 6 months. It could go on a couple weeks. I imagine Vancouver's a little bit more forward-thinking in the permitting department. But it's just something that if you've ever built anything, it's pretty much along the same vein. Solar's a pretty proven technology. From a dependability standpoint, all the components can be warranted for up to 20 years. The contract you sign with your utility will be 20 years. Our workmanship warranty is 10 years. So you have a system, you're not going to have to worry about that system for 10 years. Beyond that, there aren't any moving parts, so the ongoing maintenance isn't terribly prohibitive.
Is that prorated warranty, or is that full on the whole time?
Full on the whole time. And then another thing on the warranty issue is it's really a great industry to be in, because over my career in the solar industry, we've installed maybe 4,000 or 5,000 panels. We've warranted 3 panels, and that was due to poor handling, taking it off the truck. All of the solar panels now are made to a quality where they're meant to last until you want to recycle. So, Terry, do you think I left anything else? Josh? Any questions? Yes, sir.
Yeah, about this. This is a good segue, since you're talking about solar panels.
I think we have one question.
I have one more question, yeah. So you said 20-year lifespan, okay, or warranty for 20 years. How is the average consumer to know if the system is slowly degrading, or is it an on-off type of thing?
So in the financial model that we take our customers through, embedded in that is what's called a panel degradation factor, because they do degrade over time. That degradation factor is, on the manufacturer's warranty, it's 0.7% annually. And then that feeds back into a guarantee, a production guarantee. All tier 1 solar manufacturers, just think of it like, you know, the big auto manufacturers. We call those tier 1 solar panel manufacturers in the solar industry. They're warranted on a product basis for 25, but on a production basis for 30. So your solar panel will generate 100% year 1. At the end of 30, it varies by model, but it's going to generate an average of 80.2 of nameplate. So right now, the solar panels are like 355 watts. The guarantee there in 30 years is that you're going to be generating about 240 watts, the equivalent of that panel.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Yes, sir.
So I noticed your sample sheet here is a sample pricing of $31,000, and probably not a lot of people who have that sitting around in their piggy banks. So how do people typically finance something like that?
Terry, you want to handle that one?
Yeah, let me get to these numbers. This is a residential price breakdown that I've included here, which is sort of a separate conversation from what Zach was outlining.
Commercially, almost everything is just financed through standard lender. Residentially, there are a lot more avenues we can go down, but I'll let Terry handle that.
Sure.
Would a church fall under commercial or residential?
That's a very good question. So, as you guys can see, 64% of the benefits are tax-based. So churches do not pay taxes and thus do not qualify for the benefit.
That's not, they do pay taxes, but they don't pay taxes the same way everybody else does.
Right, so the tax credit, I'm just gonna assume is gonna be lower, so the payback, it might be a case-by-case situation where we evaluate the feasibility of that. But another thing that we often do is we try to encourage the end user, if the end user is a nonprofit, to either fund that project from a wealthy set of individuals within the congregation, and then those people can be the legal owner of record, and they can monetize all those tax benefits. So the donor gets the benefits of the donation and also gets additional tax benefits on their personal income tax return. And then it is up to them to say, hey, you know, St. Mary's, this system was going to cost you $100,000. Because I have all this tax burden, I can give it to you for $36,000. We can come up with a number where you pay me some amount, probably less than $36,000, we would hope if it's a member of the congregation. And then everybody can have the benefits at a reasonable price. Another thing that nonprofits can do is Elemental Energy has its own tax burden. Sometimes we will step in to monetize those tax benefits for a nonprofit only. We can lower the system price for the end user, whether or not they pay taxes. So there are a lot of different tools that a nonprofit can undergo. I'm just listing two there, but it can be done, and it is often done. And the nice thing about working with nonprofits is they don't have that profit-seeking motive, so they can make investments that other people can't in pursuit of some mission.
What a great way to enter the Vancouver market by donating to a nonprofit and getting income.
I think you got somebody in mind, don't you?
No, I'm just thinking the church or, you know, Sea Roots that will be building small cottages and, you know, and then, you know, I just think that then I think the 501c3s will have the ability to give in-kind contribution deduction.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then another,
Great way to get your foot in a new market.
more things are coming to mind as I talk here. Another vehicle that we can use on nonprofits if they have a lot of square footage is what's called a power purchase agreement, where the nonprofit would undertake a contract with a private developer, and that private developer essentially just becomes your utility, but they only provide you solar power. In so doing, they can, there exists the possibility that the rate that they could charge the end user is lower than the utility rate. For Vancouver, those projects don't quite pencil without an additional capital infusion from somewhere. So there are a lot of different ways. The only thing I would encourage you guys to do is reach out to anybody in the solar industry. Everybody really likes to educate. It's a collaborative industry. Nobody's gonna be mad that you talk to us or vice versa. So a lot of different tools out there. Just got to find the right person with them.
Yeah, I know of a big remodel in the pipeline, and I've been encouraging them to go geothermal, but this would also be something to look at.
Yes, ma'am.
Geothermal could be run by the solar panels.
Yeah.